most, oh, it's being recorded. Great. Continue. I think most of you know Ken Chick, or you know of Ken Chick. And Ken is a master model railroader, N-scale modeler, and has a beautiful N-scale layout. I think some of you have been to Ken's. We visited his layout, and when we went down to the convention in the regional in the northwest of Detroit, Northville, Novi, I forget exactly where it was up there. So anyways, I asked Ken, I'd seen him do a program on his layout and thought that was really enjoyable and you guys would enjoy it. So I asked him if he would come and show his, do his program for us. So Ken, I'll just hand it over to you and you can give us any kind of information you'd like there.
Okay. A little background. First of all, if I mumble, I've got a tickle in my throat, so I've got a cough drop in my mouth. And we'll hope that works for a bit. I did this as a PowerPoint presentation, and there's a video in there. And I did this a while back, and I did it with my cell phone, holding the cell phone, walking around, filming the layout. But it got a little jerky. You know, you're walking along trying to hold that thing and it jerks. Well, someone told me about a gimbal. So I got a gimbal. And so now I've done it with a gimbal. And it's a lot smoother. And the only difference between the two is that in the previous one, there were a number of trains were on the railroad. We had an operating session here a couple of weeks ago. And actually, we had one about a month before that, and everything after the pandemic worked very well. Then the next one, about a month later, all kinds of things went wrong. You know, switch machines broke. All of a sudden, we had shorts that we couldn't find, and just one of those nights. So, anyhow, all the trains were off the railroad when I ran along with the camera and the gimbal. So, a little bit different, but you'll see everything. Now, one other caveat is that I put this together and then went to look at it, and the PowerPoint presentation froze. It wouldn't show anything. And then I dumped the whole thing, redid it, and it worked. And I got it all set to go, and it froze again. So we're going to keep our fingers crossed. And if it freezes, I've got another version of the older version I think is all set to go too. So we'll see what happens. So
hey, one quick question before you're done. Give us a little more info on the gimbal. You can do it later, but that would interest more than one of us that want to take videos of our layouts.
Okay. One of the guys down here mentioned it, that he'd use it to film his. It's a handheld device. Let's see, it's got little motors in it that rotate everything about on 3 different axes. So there's one that'll rotate horizontal, vertical, and then it'll spin another way as well. You can put your cell phone in that. Okay. And once you get the cell phone turned on, you can, on the gimbal, there's a number of different options on what you want it to do. But as you're moving along with holding this thing in your hand, that camera stays level. I mean, you can tilt your hand all over the place, back and forth. That camera stays level. Now, if you want to move the camera, there's a button on it, so you can move it up and down and side to side. But it makes everything a lot smoother. You lose all the jerkiness that you would normally get when you're just holding a camera in your hand, moving along like that. So
sounds like a Steadicam that they use for news, TV reporters use.
It is. Only it's a lot smaller and probably a lot less expensive. I think this thing cost about $85, as I recall, and I'm still learning how to use it. For some reason, I have a mental block about this thing. And when I want it to, the camera to tilt down, I press the button up. So I think it's going to go down and it goes the other way instead. So and I think I probably did that once in this. I shot this video, I think 6 times before I got one that I really liked. So we'll see. It's just, there's a learning curve to it. After you get used to it, but it does a real nice job.
Great.
So anyhow,
Well, shoot me the info on it when you get a chance, and I'll pass it on to the guys through our newsletter.
there are all kinds of them that are available. And I just went and, where did I go? I think I went to Amazon and just put in cell phone gimbal.
Oh, okay, good.
And a whole bunch of them popped up, and I found this one seemed to work very well. And you connect to your phone via Bluetooth on it, and allows you to do a few other things as well. Now, there's a couple limitations in that, and I'm still trying to get past them. But to move the focus in and out, I haven't been able to play with that yet. So, but that's another thing that you can do. But as I said, there's a number of options on it and how the thing will move and how it'll hold things steady. And it's explained kind of in the little booklet that comes with it. And I think this was made in either Japan or Korea somewhere. I don't remember, but it works very well. I'm really happy with it. So,
Super. Well, thank you.
okay. Now we'll see how long it stumbles along on this, and we'll see if this thing works the way it's supposed to here. Okay.
You need to share your screen, Ken.
Share, and I want to share sound, so it'll work there. Okay. All right, can you guys see that?
Yes,
All right, let's, here we go. Okay. Name of the railroad is Danforth, Hadley, and Northern, and just a little bit of background on it. It's N scale. It's fills a room that's about 38 by 52. It's kind of patterned after the Northern Pacific a little bit, really only in that the city names are those on the Northern Pacific in the Mountain District in Montana. I modeled about 1954, and that changed a little. Actually, I started out modeling 1950 until I got the North Coast Limited with the dome cars, and then it became 54. So it's about 52 to 62 inches in height as it moves around, and most of it's L girder construction with humused over plywood, and where there's city areas, and it's all spline road bed everywhere else. So it's fairly well scenic. There are a couple areas that are still not done. It's like any other railroad. I don't think it's ever going to get done. And I run NCE DCC wireless. So now let's see if this thing will actually play. Okay, coming down the stairs to the railroad room, there's a little sign that says the journey is the reward. And that's the way I feel about model railroading. It's not an end objective. It's the pleasure that you derive along the way. That's a quote actually from Jensen Button, who was a Formula One driver and retired a couple of years ago. So we get down to the basement here. The first scene you see is it's a bridge crossing this gorge here. All right. It was designed this way simply so that someone coming down could get a good view of something. A couple little TV. There we go. And over here we've got a whiteboard, putting notes up and a bunch of other stuff, places to pin things up, and then the railroad itself. Now, the Danforth, Hadley, and Northern is actually owned by the Northern Pacific. One of them existed, one of them. All right, guys, it's freezing and it's not going. I don't know what's happening here. So let me see if I can move it back and try it again. If not, I'll get the other video running. See, how do we go back?
to answer your question, I don't know. This is in embedded video in your PowerPoint?
Yeah,
The only way you can go back is hit the escape key, and you should be able to get your slides on the side. Go down and select one of those.
let's see if this is about where we were. Board. And that's the way I feel about model railroading. It's not an end objective. It's a pleasure that you derive along the way. That's a quote actually from Jensen here. The first scene you see is this bridge crossing this gorge here. It was designed this way simply so that someone coming down could get a good view of something. A couple little scenes here. And we'll see how this connects to the railroad in just a bit here. Now, as we get into the room, this is the crew lounge area. There's a table and chairs. In the lounge area, there's a table and chairs. TV. And over here, we've got a whiteboard, putting notes up and a bunch of other stuff. And my railroad, we are always looking north, so east is to the right, west is to the left. Right in here, we've got 8 staging tracks. Okay, and this represents Chicago, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, St. Paul, anywhere that you want to be east of Montana. These will all be covered, and there'll be a large chemical facility on top of this. Now, getting into the yard, you come down the main line here. I'm not sure what's happening. That comes when we're bringing a train out. It'll come out of that tunnel there. Over here, this little yard here, this first track has no bumper on it, and that's going to extend on a bridge across the tracks that are part of the staging area onto the chemical facility. Now, they said it's just a small yard here. There's just 4 tracks, including the one that's a through track. Behind is an industrial area, and there are a number of buildings that are switched there. Guys, I'm not sure what's happening, but it's not moving. It's just sitting here, and let's see if we can try it. If I hit it here again, maybe it'll go. No. You know what? Let me exit this one and bring the other one up that's also in there. I may have to stop sharing, and let's see if we can. Yeah, I'm going to your screen sharing, stop share, go back, share screen again. And where is it? It's, yeah, right. Screen share to movies, share. All right, let's see if this one will work now. Okay, coming down the stairs to the railroad room, there's a little sign that says the journey is the reward. And that's the way I feel about model railroading. It's not an end objective. It's a pleasure that you derive along the way. That's a quote actually from Jensen Button, who was a Formula One driver and retired a couple of years ago. So we get down to the basement here. The first scene you see is this bridge crossing this gorge here. It was designed this way simply so that someone coming down could get a good view of something. A couple little scenes here. And we'll see how this connects to the railroad in just a bit here. Now, as we get into the room, this is the crew lounge area. There's a table and chairs, TV. And over here, we've got a whiteboard, putting notes up and a bunch of other stuff, places to pin things up, and then the railroad itself. Now, The Danforth, Hadley, and Northern is actually owned by the Northern Pacific. One of them existed, one of them didn't. And my railroad, we are always looking north, so east is to the right, west is to the left. Right in here, we've got 8 staging tracks. Okay, and this represents Chicago, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, St. Paul, anywhere that you want to be east of Montana. These will all be covered, and there'll be a large chemical facility on top of this. Now, getting into the yard, you come down the main line here. That comes into the yard. As you go around, when we're bringing a train out, it'll come out of that tunnel there. Over here, this little yard here, this first track has no bumper on it, and that's going to extend on a bridge across the tracks that are part of the staging area onto the chemical facility. Now, they said it's just a small yard here. There's just 4 tracks, including the one that's a through track. Behind is an industrial area, and there are a number of buildings that are switched there. These will be switched out of the Billings Terminal Railroad yard. Now, as all the tracks come together from the little yard in front, the industrial area in back, the 2 mainline tracks, all of a sudden right here, we've got a 4-track main line. I mean, they're a crossover, so anything can get to anything. And you can see behind, there are some switches sitting there. Eventually, those are going to be put in, and they will feed the tracks that go into the buildings that are behind. And on the side, there are 2 more. It'll be the same from that track coming off that part of the main line there. Now, this is the town of East Billings. It's going to be eventually. Right now, it's really a couple buildings without any streets, without any sidewalks, no curbs, not enough cars, not enough buildings, no street lights, not much activity. So all that's got to be added in. As we come along the main line here, there's going to be a junkyard here. What we've got now is a train that's just sitting there, but we need more junk, we need fences, we need an office. Coming along the main line here, we get into Billings, Montana, and this is the main station for the railroad. This is a scratch-built structure, or 3 structures actually, which are patterned after the actual Northern Pacific Station in Billings, Montana. You might see that there are a couple people lying down on the job here. I think they had to wait too long for a train and gave up. Now in back is the REA building, small coach yard, and a couple more buildings still needing tracks to be added in so that we can service them. As we come around the 4-track main line here, right in front is the engine facility for the Billings Terminal Railroad, the one that's going to service all the industries in this area. A small yard for the Billings Terminal Railroad. That 4-track main line is now down to 2 tracks in back there, and that all needs to be ballasted, and of course all the yards need to be ballasted here. These yards were just finished up. The main yard, just to the west of this, has been here for a long time, but it was always a single-ended yard, and we knew it was going to become double-ended, and that finally happened. Now that that's done and the switches are all in and working, we can scenic this. There's an awful lot of stuff in the yard right now because there's not much out on the railroad. We ran the railroad for an operating session just a while back, and we moved everything into the yard because there were some things that we found that needed some work all of a sudden after basically a year shutdown. We got a caboose track here, a work train sitting on the other track, and here are the leads into the engine facility. It's a 24 stall roundhouse. It works, the turntable works, and all the engines in there work. Many of them have sound. Let me tell you, that's a little bit of a job in N scale. Now, this whole engine facility sits on a little peninsula. This is about the only thing that came from the previous railroad, and it wasn't finished to this extent, but the turntable and the roundhouse was there, and it was just easier to move this and extend it out this way. Right here in front of us is the power plant, which provides power to everything in the engine facility area. It's a Walther's kit, but it's been modified somewhat, and it's patterned after the Northville Psychiatric Hospital powerhouse. It's about a mile from here. And I was lucky enough to get inside and walk around the outside and get a lot of pictures after the whole facility was closed down. Some guy gave me a tour when he found out I was a model railroader. These are all the buildings that service everything in the railroad area. A transfer table yet to be finished. It's got to be raised up. The table itself has to be redone. And of course, everything in here can be scenic then. Now the main line there in back is 3 tracks there, but it's actually 2-track main line and the yard lead. And that comes down, and right here is the Kramer aggregate and coal. And this is where the yard lead comes off, right in here. So it's a pretty good long lead. We've got a crossing here, but the track that's running along the river here is just a dummy track. It's just there for scenic purposes. It goes under the bridge there into a tunnel. It's all of about a ½ an inch deep. Occasionally we find that there are cars sitting on this for an interchange, although they never really get interchanged. A couple canoeists. Some sunbathers there on the beach. Some cranes. They're dredging. And this whole area in here is going to be an iron ore smelter, as the sign says, patterned after the one in Hancock, Michigan. I was lucky enough to get the plans and the floor layout for every single building up there. Mine's not going to occupy the same amount of space, but a little bit of the feeling of it. Some empty ore gonds that are sitting there. This is stuff that just got moved at the end of the operating session. The city behind is Mossman, Montana. There's some ore jennies right in front here. Station, freight house, grain tower, all the normal stuff you see. Some other industries to switch. And right about here, you can see there's a track going off the main line there, the double track main line. That's the beginning of a branch line that goes up to Hobson. Right now it runs through across the are in back of the main line there. There's another track in front which also comes from the branch line and goes straight down to the smelter area. But in back is Laurel, Montana, which is our interchange with the Milwaukee. The branch line goes across the bridge there, across the river, behind the island there. That's Crocodile Island, because it kind of looks like a crocodile there. And if you get a good view, there's a boat there and there are some fishermen there, but unfortunately these guys are not very good. They've been there for many, many years and have never caught a single fish, so I'm not sure what their problem is. Wrong kind of bait. The road and back has a whole bunch of Burma shave signs on it. And again, the branch line is on the other side of the road, and the main line is now on this side of the river. And here's where we get into Broadview, where there's a station there, and just a couple industries. Branch line goes up grade, about 1%, if that. Goes through that tunnel there. We're on a peninsula now. This is the end of the peninsula. As we round the end of the peninsula, now we're getting into Columbus. And there are a lot of industries to switch in Columbus. There's a Linky lumber yard. No lumber. Needs several buildings and a few other structures, but eventually it'll be fully completed. And need the chain link fence, which is sitting in the workshop, but all that'll go in eventually, but we still switch there. There's a team track in front, two businesses in back that ship in and out. A large freight house, station, a couple more businesses in front that have a track coming into them, receive and ship. A couple of abandoned buildings in back. One's fully abandoned, the other's semi-abandoned. And you can see right here we've got really 3 tracks, a 2-track main line and a long passing siding. But as we get out of Columbus, going west, you can see where the passing siding disappears, and so does the one of the tracks from the main line. We're now down to a single track main line. And that crosses, that single track main line is now single track all the way to the west end of the railroad, and it crosses the trestle here. Now behind that is Hobson. And that's where the branch line comes up. It goes across the bridges there, across the gorge, and into this area here where there are a couple of mines yet to be finished. There's got to be the conveyor that comes from one mine to the other, and then the conveyor to the little tipple area there. Now the train sitting here will go into the tunnel on the right over there. It's simply a loop that comes around to the tunnel on the left. And the way this operates is the train goes in one session, comes out in the next session. Now coming across the trestle, the main line is here. Goes into a tunnel to get past that part of the mountain. Comes out on this side. And passes Mission, Montana, where we have a lumber mill. It's got a couple more buildings that are going to go in there. And all the dump equipment has to go in, and the rocks have to be moved a little bit to accommodate that. Now, the track behind the lumber mill is a separate railroad. It's the logging railroad. At one point in time, when this was built, logging railroad, and there's an engine house there, the logging railroad had a switch that went into the main line about over here. It was ripped out once the engine was run in and the cars in the engine were run in, so that they wouldn't have to pay the Northern Pacific or the Danforth, Hadley, and Northern maintenance on that switch. Now, that's a switchback. The logging railroad comes all the way along here, runs over just short of that tunnel. There's a just to the right of the portal, and there's an abutment there, and used to be a bridge on top of that. And you can kind of see where there's some ties left, a couple pieces of rail. That was abandoned years ago. And then the railroad boarded up the tunnel portal so that no one could get in, get hurt, and sue the railroad. All right, now the switchback comes from there. Goes back along here. You can see where all the trees in front were cut down. Goes up where the Shea is. Past the the burning tower. All the way back over there. Just about where the tunnel is. It stops, switches back, and starts to go back upgrade some more. And there's the logging camp up there. Some of the things that people almost never see. Some deer there. There's some up there. There's some more back in there. And there's another one up top there. Anyhow, the main line coming out of Mission comes along, across the bridge, crossing the what's kind of used to be a creek until it got dammed up. Comes along here, goes into the tunnel on the end of this peninsula again. As we get over here, you can see more of what's going to be a logging camp, working logging camp. None of the guy wires are in. You can see where the trees got cut down though, but there's a whole bunch of equipment that has to go in here to make it more realistic. Now, as we get along to this side of the peninsula, the main line comes out of the tunnel there, goes by that structure. It's really nothing but a business of getting rock and rubble out. Now we're in Livingston. The tunnel there is about 6 inches deep and nothing more. It's simply used as an interchange. There's really the mainline track, passing siding, and 2 storage tracks here. It's a very small yard. Now, the aisleway here is a little over 4.5 feet wide, so we're going to extend this out and put 3 or 4 more tracks into that yard, so it'll be much more usable. However, there is a cooling tower there, a water tank, and what's hiding in back is a rotary snowplow. Now the main line goes into the tunnel there, and you can see there's a switch there, and it's split, so there's 2 tracks going into that tunnel. Coming around the other side of this little abutment there, there are 2 portals here. The lower track goes across this little trestle, and that guy's been trying to climb up there for 2 years now. He's never made it. You know, that comes across here. and goes to Anthony, Michigan, or Anthony, Montana, where we have the large coal mine. It's the Norton Fuel Supply #1. Now, a little bit higher track, which is going upgrade about a 0.5% here, comes out of the far tunnel portal, goes across the steel bridge, and goes into this tunnel portal there. The idea of this whole operation here is, rather than build a switchback, or excuse me, a helix, I built a large figure 8, and I needed altitude to get over those file cabinets there, which store railroad stuff and business stuff. Now, the railroad goes into that tunnel, comes out of the tunnel on the other side of that bridge there, runs along the the little stream there, comes back over here, goes in there, and then comes out of that tunnel there, goes across the bridge into that tunnel. We've now done the figure 8. Comes out of that tunnel. It's called Bozeman Tunnel. Goes across the Carver Trestle. And then we get to Logan. Logan is really not on the main line. You can see just coming across the trestle here, the track splits, and there's a branch line coming down going into Logan. Logan has a little engine house there, turntable, a few engine facilities. Some businesses. The station, some more businesses that we switch. It goes under those bridges there and into the tunnel on the other side, and that goes into the other room. Note that the track splits there. There was a main line here and a passing siding, and they come back together and then they split. And the reason is those two tracks go to different places. And you'll see that in the other room. Now, the main line coming across the trestle there has a large passing siding and a long passing siding on the back side of it. Comes along here. It's stopped going upgrade now. Now we're just about level. It crosses those two, or that series of bridges. Crosses this little trestle, this dry riverbed. And back here is the Delight Warehouse. And there are 3 tracks there. And that services all kinds of reefers. This is the station that's in Whitehall, Montana. A farmhouse there, a little barn. You can see some beehives there and 2 guys tending them. And they take care of this apple orchard here. It's a good sized apple orchard, about 100 acres. Now, all of these trees, all those apple trees have apples on them. Unlike most of the trees that you buy in the store, the apples are on the underside of the branches instead of on top. And they're all edible. They're simply cake decorations. Anyhow, the single track has a passing siding here, and then there's a siding on the back side where we can store reefers and stock cars. You might notice some hobos relaxing here. Get over here, we also find a junker that's been there for several years. It's pretty well abandoned and torn apart. This is the Perry Stockyard. Main line goes across the river here, goes across that bridge, crossing the track, and we'll talk about that in a minute. All right, this is Homestake, which in reality looks nothing like the real Homestake, but we're using the names. Station, couple grain towers there. Now, the mainline track goes behind this city here and into that tunnel portal there. That tunnel portal is what we saw coming down the stairs. That's where it comes out. Now, this is the main line curving around the end of this peninsula, and at this point we're starting to go downgrade. Back around the peninsula. Out of that tunnel, across the road. You can see a farm in the background. And now we're coming into Butte, Montana. And in Butte, there are a number of businesses that get switched here, including King Brewery, Stelly Warehouse, Hubner Chemical. The station. And for those of you that remember Dennis Constable, that's Constable Manufacturing. Truck comes along here. This is the one place in the railroad. Butte is the one place in the railroad where we're looking south, and east is to the left and west to the right. So we're still going west to the far end of the railroad. But we did this to reduce the height so we can get into the shop a little bit better. Goes under that bridge that we saw earlier, then into that tunnel right there, and into the shop. Oh, a couple points of interest. The gentleman's room. A necessity for old guys. The kitchen with the refrigerator for beer and wine. And pop, too. Now we're in the shop, and this is Garrison, Montana. Coming out of Butte, where it went under the bridge and into the wall, it comes out of the wall behind the door there. Comes along the front of the area here. Railway Express. Main passenger station. That track curving off to the right is one of the tracks that goes to Logan. Back over there you can see behind that building another track going in. That's the other track that goes to Logan. The effect then is here, they both connect to the main line, and we have a Y that can be used for turning trains. It's also the way that we run to Logan from the yard or from Logan into the station. All right, the main line continues past the ventilation for the spray booth there, past the Duke School of Business, and sometimes Monkey Business, past all the power equipment for the whole house. There's another little roundhouse there, turntable. None of this has been synced either, and some of the things that are sitting here have to be moved into a final place eventually. Now this is a 13-track staging yard here, and is the west end and termination of the railroad. And that is the Danforth, Hadley, and Northern. Okay. If I get this other thing going again, there's some other picture, a couple other things that I can show you, or I can certainly answer any questions that you have. Let me kill this, start that, go back over to, should be right there. All right. Get past that. There we go. The sign up board for operations. And this is the dispatch area. And we operate via phones, and we've got a fast clock on here using NC. I use the Hammerheads, and they all have a fast clock right in the controller itself. But this is the fast clock for the, and there are two of them in the railroad as well. That's the fast clock for the dispatcher. A better view of the shop where Garrison is here and the yard's over there. That's the obviously the spray booth, and oh yeah, the it's a pizza oven door, which became famous for a while. Coming down the stairs into the basement, you have to do a 180-degree turn, and there's a small landing there. There's no way you could get drywall sheets down there. Now, when I bought the house, there was a concrete floor, poured concrete walls, no ceiling. So we finished it all off, but to get the drywall in and any of the studs that we needed, that goes out to the garage, and the garage floor is just about this level. So Marv Linke came along with a concrete saw, and we cut out that whole thing. That's it's a little bit more than, that's about 5 feet wide in there. We just cut it out, cut out all the concrete. And in doing that, we managed to find that there was the headers that sit on top of the concrete there that the joists are connected to was split right about there. It was butt jointed. So we had a real weak point. So you got a piece of C-channel, a huge piece of C-channel, marked where the joists were, took it away, drilled it, brought it back, and we sank some bolts through the C-channel, through the headers, and into the joists. And those bolts were those things were at least 8 inches long. It was a real job. The thing's pretty secure now. So, so we call it the pizza oven door. And there's a whole bunch of scenes here. If you want to, if anyone's interested, I could go through those, but they're basically what you saw, except there are trains sitting on all of these. So any thoughts? You want to look at any of those, or you have any questions? What would you like me to do?
I have a question, operations wise, how do your crews operate? What kind of paperwork do you use and such?
We use switch lists, and I initially looked at a couple different programs to do that, and wasn't really satisfied with any of them. And the other thing that bothered me a little bit was there are about 800 cars on the railroad, and I would have had to put all of those into a program, create a database. Never got around to it. So basically, I've got some software that I kind of worked up with on the computer, and just generate switch lists. And that takes a little bit of work, but it gets done before each operating session. Then each of the trains or each of the operators, when they get into the dispatcher, gets his set of instructions. Tells which cars go where and what gets dropped off and what gets picked up along the way.
Okay, about how many people does it take to crew your railroad for a session?
To really make the thing any fun, we probably need 8 people minimum. We've had as many as 17.
Wow. Anybody else have any questions for Ken?
You want to see the pictures? Do you want me to stop it here?
Well, we've got another set program to do. Did you have some specific pictures you wanted to show us?
No, they're just everything that you've seen before. Okay. That's
Ken,
all.
I've got a question. What kind of couplers are you using?
All the couplers are KD couplers. Every once in a while, we find one of them that looks like a KD, but isn't, and they don't seem to work too well. And when we find those, we replace them. All couplers are body mounted now, except for the passenger cars. The passenger cars still use the Telgo couplers because we're not doing a whole lot of switching with those. So we don't worry about backing them.
Thanks.
Yeah,
When did you
Kevin's
start
another
your-
N scaler.
When did you start the railroad and building this one?
Did
When
you
did
get
you
that?
start building the railroad? And maybe you said earlier, but I guess I might have missed it.
Ken, are you with us?
Oh, you're asking, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm old.
That's okay. I thought maybe you dropped out.
What was the question?
I forgot I'm old what the question was. No, when did you start building this railroad and was it a
Oh,
team effort? Did you have guys over and help you or did you do it all yourself?
I did it all myself last week.
What took you so long?
We moved into this place almost 30 years ago and spent the first 2 years prepping the basement, making sure everything was right. I insulated the walls, drywalled them, put an electrical system all the way around in the basement, put an extra breaker box in just for the railroad, and then we started building it. Now, we had a lot of bench work and actually a whole lot of stuff from the previous railroad that had been stored. And when we brought it here, we said, no, well, it was a great idea to save it. Now let's throw it all away. So we took the buildings off the track and kept the L girder bench work and put it together. And so it's been about 25 years of building this. I'm in one of the clubs is the Midnight Pocatello Yardmasters. Of course, you knew Dewey Norton. That's where Dewey was, and Larry Wright, who did the hot box for 2 decades, and a whole bunch of other guys. And I've had a lot of help from them, but most of it I've done myself over 20 years. I've said there's no rush in it. I don't think it's ever going to get done, but I don't really care. I just have fun doing it and changing scenes and improving it as time permits. So one of the things that takes time is it's all code 55 track. All the turnouts on this railroad, there are over 250 turnouts. All of those are hand laid. I've made most of them with fast tracks, templates. Some I just made on paper templates. The original ones, the first set of them actually came from Railcraft, which was the company that made the first 55 code rail, which became Micro Engineering when they bought it from Railcraft. And what he provided me with were turnouts, but no ties, nothing holding together except 2 bus bars soldered across the top of the rails in 2 places. So I had to take all that apart and put printed circuit ties underneath and then regular ties. So But all the frogs are powered, all the points are solid rail points, so it's fairly reliable.
Very good. Do you have, what kind of traffic control do you have for your trains during a session? The train orders?
No, there's a schedule, but I think we're going to change the schedule around quite a bit. The dispatcher communicates with the engineers via handheld phones, or little walkie-talkies, the tiny little things. And every once in a while, we have a good mock-up. At one time, actually a couple times, we've had 2 trains which were too long for the passing siding. The North Coast Limited and a very long freight train get into Butte. And we taught people how to do switch-bys. Actually, one time we had 3 trains in there. I don't know how the heck that happened. The dispatcher wasn't doing his job, but we managed to get them all working. On the dispatcher's panel, where all the sidings are, there's a number that shows the number of cars that can go into that siding. The engineers are supposed to, well, when they get their paperwork, it shows how many cars are in the train. When they request permission to leave where they are, in the town that they're in where they were working, go to the next town, they're supposed to tell the engineer how many cars they now have in the train, so he can make sure that there's clearance for them wherever they need to go. So, and it works pretty well. We have fun with it anyhow.
Anybody else have any questions for Ken? So Ken, if we ever got a group together, you'd be interested in hosting a session?
Sure, absolutely. We built the railroad to operate. And it's more fun, even if things don't go right. We always have a good time on the railroad. So
Well,
that's
maybe
what it's
we
here
can set
for.
something up. So very good. Well, thank you very much for presenting that. It was very enjoyable.
You